Thank you so much, Judith, and welcome everyone. This is our first effort, our inaugural webinar. Everyone's becoming quite expert in doing this, but I think that what we have lined up today is especially timely and important. I'm really thrilled that we have the Val Verde School District president on our call today as our guest panelist, as well as our CSAC staff who are experts in some of the policy changes or verification changes that we'll be speaking on today's call. I also want to thank Governor Newsom and the legislature for their commitment to funding financial aid. Given all the state proposed cuts to various programs, financial aid remains with funding, and this is in part, a large part, due to the recognition that students. It appears I'm breaking up too, so I'm going to go ahead and go off camera. See if that helps. Okay, is that better? Okay.
Much better.
Okay, great. So again, thanking Governor Newsom and the legislature for their commitment to financial aid funding, even though virtually every other program in the state has been proposed to be cut, they have retained their commitment to financial aid and their commitment to equity and access. So we're really grateful for them that it does not appear that we'll be experiencing any funding to the Cal Grant program and other financial aid programs. So this is critical at this time. We know that students and families are struggling. This is such an unpredictable time in terms of, what's next in our world, in our work, in our school. The one thing we do know is that unemployment is skyrocketing. About 18% of the state is the unemployment rate is about 18% across the state, but in certain jurisdictions already. That's extremely difficult on communities, and it's extremely difficult for students and families who are thinking about the prospects of going to college. So this is an opportunity for us to convene and talk about the ways in which we can work with students' needs during this partial or full stay-at-home order, and get them the information that they need. This particular webinar will address recent changes to the Cal Grant verification process during COVID-19. In the midst of all this turmoil, we've made an effort to ease Cal Grant requirement or the process for students and educators to make it easier for them and not have as many administrative hurdles this summer during the COVID-19 crisis. And then we're going to hear from our panelists who will talk about how we implement these changes and basically advocate for students that they too can apply for financial aid and continue their college aspirations. I'd like to thank Judith Gutierrez, who facilitated this webinar and will be facilitating all future webinars. So I'm sure we're going to work on the audio, but all the other logistics have been handled beautifully. Now I'd like to turn to Catalina Cifuentes, Chair of the California Student Aid Commission. She has been an incredible leader on the commission. She is a force to be reckoned with in the K-12 world and has brought that same commitment and passion to the commission. And she keeps the commission focused on the issues that matter most to students. So please join me in welcoming Chair Cifuentes to this webinar.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not even going to try to turn on my camera because I don't want, we're having technical difficulties. I just want to say thank you for being here and for joining us. We're excited to kick off the support needed for our students. Our commission, Marlene, and our executive director, the entire team is extremely passionate about it, ensuring that our students don't miss a beat, especially during COVID-19 and everything that's happened. When it comes to their post-secondary dreams, we don't want them to let financial aid and college affordability stand in their way. CSAC is one of the few state agencies that is not only continue to provide support during COVID, but still taking phone calls. I mean, you call the hotline and someone's answering the phone for you directly to their computer, and ensuring that the students and our families get the support they need. So today's the beginning of additional support. Like I mentioned, we're passionate about ensuring that all students receive support, and families, and that they get their questions answered. And we are also working on so many different plans, and we continue to, please email us and share us ideas. There's a lot of things coming forward, from looking at how we can ensure our students get CalFresh, to the entire grant delivery system modernization of the CSAC platform. So if you're a K-12 person and you've used the reports, believe me, we hear you loud and clear. They're not always user-friendly and ideal. So we're in the final stages of a whole new system being able to be rolled out, so you can have those reports in a user-friendly format that works for K-12. So just happy to be here and excited to have our guests later on to share some best practices and hands-on. And it is June 16th, but the FAFSA and the financial aid push continues. Today's really about, we for the most part, we caught a lot of our students before March 2nd, right? Our UC and our CSU and our out-of-state bound students. But right now is where we're gonna hit our community college students. And for the most part, community college students leave over $300 million sometimes on the table when it comes to financial aid and Pell Grants and state grants, because they don't submit their FAFSA or their California Dream Act. And so today's really about ensuring some of these updates will help and reduce the barriers to that and get them the support they need, and not be worried to do the Dream Act because of selective service and the different things we're going to talk about today. So just excited and honored to be here, and please continue, whether in the chat or the Q&A, any suggestions or recommendations or things you'd love to see the Student Aid Commission and our team work on. We're more than happy to listen and hear you, and definitely they're all eyes and ears, and they're amazing people to work with. I just want to close with, I think we have less than 12 people that answer all phone calls for the state of California. And that's to show you how amazing they are and what they do for the state. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Judith. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. And I'm going to follow the lead of our commission chair and refrain from going on video to make sure that you can hopefully all hear me loud and clear. Good morning. My name is Jake Bremner, and as of June 1st, I've been serving as the Director of Government and External Relations for the California Student Aid Commission. And I mentioned that to both introduce myself to you all, as well as to provide an opportunity for me to acknowledge and thank my two colleagues here at the Commission, Julia Blair, our General Counsel, and Melissa Bardo, our Legislative Analyst, who worked on the executive order that we'll be describing shortly. Julia and Melissa will also be available on the line to help take any questions you might have on these actions. As mentioned already, we'll be briefly outlining two changes to financial aid regulations made through executive order by Governor Newsom on May 19th, as well as guidance from the Commission, all of which has been intended to ensure that California students seeking financial assistance to pursue higher education are not faced with additional barriers created by COVID-19. I will also be joined by Catalina Missler, our Interim Chief Deputy Director at the Commission, who will help explain the programmatic effects of these changes. So if we could go to the next slide, please. The first change we'll be walking through is around the GPA verification process for Cal Grant entitlement awards. In his May 19th executive order, Governor Newsom extended the deadline for GPA verification for Cal Grant entitlement awards, both the high school entitlement and the transfer entitlement, from March 2nd to September 2nd. Prior to the executive order, a completed financial aid application and a certified grade point average, or GPA, must have been submitted by the March 2nd deadline. However, the late GPA appeal process for entitlement awards allows students and schools to submit late GPA appeals to the Commission until May 18th. The change from this executive order only applies to students who had already submitted their application for financial aid before the March 2nd deadline. However, by April, our data indicated that there were several thousand students who had applied for financial aid, but were still missing a verified GPA for Cal Grant purposes. Because schools were closed during the COVID-19 health crisis, the Commission's call center had received calls from students that they wouldn't be able to meet the late GPA appeal deadline due to school closures. By extending the GPA verification deadline to September 2nd, the executive order helped students have more time to work with their schools to submit a verified GPA and avoid potentially losing out on their Cal Grant Entitlement Award as a result of school closures. So with that, I'll pause there and see if Catalina would like to add anything.
Yes, so I wanted to add that we have released 2 commission special alerts that were related to information on the COVID-19 Cal Grant program update. One was released on May the 27th, and the other one was released on June the 2nd, which provides more information. And we received numerous questions from high schools and colleges, so we wanted to collect all of the questions that were being asked related to that, and we added a frequently asked questions. So I want to put a plug in for those of you who have not signed up for our listserv so that you could get updates on Cal Grants and Middle Class Scholarship and all the programs we administer, including these changes from the executive order. Please do so, and you can go directly to our CSAC website to join the listserv and receive communications from us. We also wanted to inform the high schools, counselors, and schools that we've done everything we can to make this an easy process. With these changes for students, we've made sure that students have the opportunity also to serve themselves in these areas and be able to self-certify when a high school or an institution can't certify on their behalf. So for the GPA verification for the Cal Grant Entitlement, students can continue to have their GPAs uploaded through the September 2nd deadline. And schools can do that individually so that they can, if there was did not get their GPA in, high school has more than one student and they don't want to manually key in those students individually, please contact our institutional support staff and they'll help you upload those records. But we'll continue to monitor those on a weekly basis, and as GPAs come in, they will be matched up with the student's FAFSA or CADA application, which should have met the March 2nd deadline, and continue to include those in our weekly award cycles. So please make sure that students understand, and if you're aware of any student where their GPA didn't get submitted, to please upload that in our web grant system and work with our institutional support to get their GPA in before the September 2nd deadline.
Thank you, Catalina. So we'll shift to the next slide and the next change that we'll describe, which is one that's specific to students who file a California DREAM Act application. As some of you likely already know, the California DREAM Act application is a form made available to AB 540 students so that they might apply for state financial aid. Many undocumented students and deferred action for childhood arrivals or DACA recipients are able to access both in-state tuition rates at our colleges and universities, as well as state financial aid through the AB 540 program. Governor Newsom's executive order waived a requirement for California DREAM Act application filers to verify their registration with the Selective Service in order to be eligible for Cal Grants. The order waived this requirement for both the 2019-20 and the 2020-21 academic years. To be eligible for a Cal Grant award, a student must follow all applicable federal Selective Service registration requirements. So this means that with very few exceptions, all males between the ages of 18 and 25, including undocumented males, must register with the Selective Service system. Students that don't have a social security number or may have been issued a social security number through the DACA program must mail in a paper copy of their Selective Service registration form to the U.S. Selective Service Registration Information Office. Once the form is processed, students then receive a registration acknowledgement in the mail that they can send to their financial aid office. Normally, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to process these manual forms. Once the financial aid office receives a copy of the registration acknowledgement, they can then disperse the award to the student. An important note here, though, is that there's no option to submit selective service registration online for students that do not have a social security number. So due to COVID-19, the selective service had stopped processing all paper registration, creating a clear barrier for students seeking a Cal Grant through the California DREAM Act application. Waiving the verification requirement for selective service registration allows undocumented students and DACA recipients to continue to access state financial aid during the COVID-19 crisis. Catalina, would you like to add anything here?
Yes. So we want to make sure that schools understand that the selective service registration verification is a role that the campuses have in place, which means that once a DREAM Act student is offered a Cal Grant award and placed on a Cal Grant roster, they have no flags pending that verification. So the commission doesn't indicate that the student does not have, it does not place a hold on their record for an institution to pay them. So we want to make sure that we've provided the special alert to the campuses, informing them that the students are still required to register for selective services. However, they are not required to provide verification of this registration. So we ask schools to make sure that they are not collecting that from students if they're currently on hold, due to the executive order, these students have, this requirement has been waived for this year, not only this year, but also for the upcoming 2021 academic year. And so I just want to answer a question that just came up. It said, does the selective service waiver apply to California DREAM Act applicants only? Yes, and this is because, again, as Jake mentioned, that the undocumented students cannot register through selective service electronically, whereas students that are residents, they are or citizens, they can register electronically, and they receive something back that's an electronic verification. So because these students are not able to get the verification of their registration based on these offices from the U.S. Department of Education being closed, or there's selective service registration, they do not have that opportunity to get that verification and take it to their financial aid office to have that verified. Therefore, the answer to that question is yes, it's only for the DREAM Act students. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Catalina, and appreciate you taking that question from our audience member. So we'll segue to the next slide, which is the last change that Catalina and I will be speaking to. And this final item is on guidance that the Student Aid Commission has put forth regarding the process for how students can verify their high school graduation. In order to be eligible for a high school entitlement award, a Cal Grant applicant must verify their high school graduation after meeting all other criteria. Failure to do so results in a hold being placed on that student's grant award. However, as with the GPA verification process we described earlier, the closure of high schools in light of COVID-19 stood to create barriers to how graduation might normally be verified, potentially resulting in students losing access to aid or having their aid placed on hold. To avoid that scenario, the Commission has encouraged students to self-certify their graduation rather than waiting for their school to do so. Catalina, would you like to add anything here?
Yes, so just as Jake said, that the students can self-certify. So it's just as easy, and we encourage all students to establish a Web Grants for Students account, which they are able then to see the information that we have, what school we have them on, make school changes, make updated demographic changes, and also including certifying their high school graduation. And so once they log in to the Web Grants for Students, I think there's a checklist that will indicate that that is one requirement that needs to be answered. And so they can easily go in and self-certify, and then that will take that flag off of their record, so that when the institution has that student's record, it doesn't show that they are pending based on that verification. So we encourage students to log into their Web Grants for Students account and certify. It's very easy. Also, if high schools are also continuing to certify on behalf of the students, that is still open. So high schools can go in and also certify on behalf of their students. But if they're unable to, this Web Grants for Students, these students can self-certify and update their records.
Thank you, Catalina. Taken together, the executive order and this guidance from the commission that Catalina and I have just described are all intended to avoid further potential negative impacts to students and their ability to access state financial aid as a result of COVID-19 and the resulting school closures. So we're very appreciative to not only the legislature, but especially Governor Newsom for taking these actions and helping ensure that these school closures and office closures in the case of the Selective Service Registration Office are not going to be negatively impacting how students are able to access their Cal Grant. So with that, we'll pass it back over to Judith.
Okay, thank you so much, Judith. And I think it's important for us to go, and some of the questions I've been watching, and the team, CSAC team, if we can go ahead and answer some of these questions before we start to the panel, because I know sometimes we can chat and answer them typing, but I think people like to hear and walk you through. So Jake and Catalina, could you kind of expand a little bit on what does self-certify look like? Is it going to just be a checkbox?
Okay. Can Terry help to answer those questions, or Patricia?
Hi, Catalina, this is Patricia. I'm working on some of them myself.
Okay, can you answer some of those though?
I can answer some of them, and I'm going through them. I may not be able to answer all of them, but
Can you answer it, Patricia? Patricia, can you answer it verbally now, though? Explain to them now?
Yes, of course.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
that's what we're looking for. Thank you. We can go back and type them later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the questions that I was answering is, what does self-certified look like? And so what these students will see when they log in into the Web Grants for Students, they will need to select the award for the 2020-21 academic year. It's a tab that they will select. When they do that, they will see an orange that says to-do list. When they click on the to-do list, it will show them what they need to do. And one of them, they already talked about confirming the high school graduation, which students should be able to do that now. But the other thing that they need to remember is that they also need to claim their school. So it's not just the high school graduation, but it also the other to-do pending list that they need to do and check off is that they need to confirm that that's the school they're going to go to, the one that shows on their account. And if it's not the school that they're going to go to, it's a different school, then they can definitely make a change of school and then confirm that that's the school they're going to go to. So that's one. And I think is it possible to make the GPA verification form fillable? We are actually working on that right now. And so we already talked about that. So it'll be coming up in the future. So we're working on it right now. Let's see.
There was also, I just saw, I support a group of schools that were accidentally submitted the wrong graduation date. The date submitted was 12/2020. A request to make a correction on the graduation date has been made. Should students continue to certify their grad date or wait until the correction has been made? So now that students can self-certify their own graduation date, so they go ahead and advise their students to go ahead and just do that and not wait for the school change to be made.
So if the student shows the incorrect, it should be the month and year of the high school graduation. If they see that it's not the correct month or year, they can call us and then we can help them with that. We can actually change that for them as well. I'm not sure, Terry, if the schools can actually do that for them. I don't know if anyone else can answer that on the school side.
I'm not sure. This is Terry Artica. I'm not sure if the schools can change it or if they could simply call in to school support and then we can change it on their behalf.
Okay, but they can definitely, Carolina, they can definitely call student support and we can help them with that as well.
So can I clarify, Patricia? This is Marlene. So if a student, if the institution has listed the wrong date for graduation, the student can't just go in and self-certify the correct date, that there will have to be made a correction to the overall submission from the institution?
I would advise the student that if that is not the correct month and year, they would definitely should call us and we can help them with that, Marlene.
Okay.
Because even if we are not able to do it ourselves, we can actually work with the schools or work with Terry's team to get that corrected.
Okay.
And it doesn't happen very often. Most of the time it is the correct month and year, but sometimes it can happen that maybe we have an incorrect month on the high school graduation.
Okay, and Patricia, for the web grant, to certify graduation, the website is the student's web grant account, right? They'll have to have a web grant account and that's where they go and certify their own graduation?
That's correct, Carolina. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then another question came up, and please, whoever's a CSAC from the team, please step in and answer because I know we all have different roles. So this came up, and it's a little bit related, but I know it's going to be ongoing, especially with a lot of students as a result of COVID-19. Their districts went credit, no credit. Some of them did credit, no credit, and grades. So it's a little bit different across California. And the question says, how is CSAC dealing with credit, no credit grades that may be issued this quarter semester? How will that affect their GPA qualifying for a Cal Grant? And so I'm going to speak personally for myself, and then definitely whoever Marlene or Catalina Missler want to share. But CSAC takes the GPA from the districts, and we speak in someone that I have the honor of working with 23 school districts. This was a conversation that came up that you could have a student that had a 2.9 GPA, and then they were all straight A's this semester. You know, I see this a lot with my AVID students, and they do really well, and they probably would have been bumped up to a Cal Grant A if they were to accept all their A's, but the district went credit, no credit, and now there's no grades within that GPA to bump it. And so now the student could potentially miss out on a Cal Grant A. So the conversations we had with districts is that was a consideration when you decided to go credit, no credit, that could happen potentially. So I don't know if anyone from the team wants to expand, but that's why it's a local controlled decision, and the districts have to decide that. And now those were considerations that we hope, we shared that with a lot. I'm going to speak for in my county, Riverside County, that we talked about a lot, that is a consideration to think about. But anybody else want to expand on that one?
Sure, this is Terry Artica with the Institutional Support Unit. So first, there is a GSA that was released. So that's GSA 2020-21. And if you are not, if you haven't signed up for the listserv, you can go to our website and go to our communications tab and still pull this up right now. So you don't necessarily have to be a subscriber to the listserv to see this. So you could pull this up now if you go to the website. It's a grant special alert. That's what a GSA stands for. And in that GSA, there is a frequently asked questions. And in that frequently asked questions, we address the concern about the pass, no pass grading. So, and you are correct, Catalina, that it, in a sense, was a local control decision. So, for example, I have a high school student and their district allowed the students to take the choice of whether they should do a pass, no pass, or would like to count the grades. And in terms of CSAC, as you know, we count the sophomore and junior year as the grades earned during that time period for your GPA. So if in this case, let's give an example. Today we have a junior that just completed their spring semester. So that would be 4 semesters of grades. So in that example, we would count the first 3. So the sophomore fall, sophomore spring, junior fall, and the junior spring, we would utilize those semesters to calculate the GPA. And all that guidance is provided in the FAQ. So if there were no pass grades utilized for the junior spring semester, you would simply be using the 3 semesters with grades to calculate the GPA. If the student received grades in the spring semester, you would also use those grades. So we wanted to give the districts the ability to decide on that grading and also still allow them to go forward to calculate the GPA. So that guidance is in the FAQ. And conversely, next year, the next group of students, right, if they were a sophomore this year, they would be missing that spring semester, but then the next 2 semesters would also count in calculating the GPA. So I know that was a long-winded answer, and hopefully the FAQ is a little more clear.
So can I, this is Marlene, I just want a clarifying question. So if a student is in their senior year and they got the pass, no pass, this does not affect their Cal Grant GPA because they will have already submitted their GPA March 2nd, correct?
Yes, that's correct,
That's
Marlene.
correct.
So that, yeah, that didn't affect. So this is our juniors and our
With the
sophomores.
Juniors and sophomores. So this is an issue. Currently, the way we calculate, we wouldn't calculate the pass, no pass. So this would affect their applications for next year. And it is an issue that's being addressed or being looked at by the legislature as a potential area to resolve because of COVID-19. And those discussions are ongoing right now. So we don't have an answer to that just yet, but it is definitely something that is on the radar of many, including some legislators.
Okay, thank you. So I see a few additional questions. I know the team's working on answering them, and we have built-in time at the end to answer those additional questions and scenarios. So like I said, most of us will stay on until we need to make sure every question gets answered. And like Marlene, I can't echo enough. Marlene has been amazing at looking at all those legislative barriers. I know we get requests that say, why can't we do this? And it's like, it's in the law, in the California law that says why we can't. So it's not like it's a student aid commission decision or they just don't want to do it. It's written in the law. So some of these things take, like you saw the executive orders like that, those had to come from the governor. So the team will continue to work on some of those barriers. And like I said, the GPA was a concern, but I know we have so many people on. I want to make sure that those conversations hopefully were discussed in your school district and if your LEA is on the call, because it was a huge conversation because it could affect a student's financially based on what the local school board decided. So with that, while we continue to answer the questions, we'll go ahead and move on to our presenters, because I definitely want to give them enough time to go over their presentations. So we're excited to have Val Verde Unified present today with us. I'm going to go ahead and let each of them introduce themselves in just a second. But Val Verde Unified, you might have heard of them. They were the first district in California to make FAFSA and California Dream Act graduation requirement. They actually made it a board policy, got it approved. Most of their schools are above 90%, if not 95 to 97% FAFSA and California Dream Act completion. They do amazing work with their students and families, but it's really a systemic focus. And today they're not going to necessarily share how do they get to 97% FAFSA completion, but more all the communications, what they do to communicate with students and families. So now we have these 3 new executive orders. They're already thinking and working on how are we going to get this information out to our parents and our families and our students. And they have some pretty amazing systems. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to learn from them. They're also willing to share and partner. So we'll definitely provide the PowerPoint, their email addresses, and you can always reach out. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over. We'll start with Cheryl McCarrick, and she's our principal of Rancho Verde High School. And then and then you just tell us when you're ready. Matt, you'll take over. So Cheryl, please.
Good morning, everyone. Like Catalina said, I'm Cheryl McCary. I'm the principal at Rancho Verde High School. I've been here in our district since 2004. Principal here at Rancho Verde since for 4 years now. And like Catalina said, we are the first district to make FAFSA graduation requirement here. And but I'm proud to say that even prior to having it as a graduation requirement, I think across our district we had several systems in place that really emphasize the importance of FAFSA for all our students. And hopefully we'll be able to share some of those strategies of how we communicated that out today.
Hey, my name's Matthew Elder. I'm the assistant principal at Orange Vista High School. I was a teacher and coach in our district, also the VVTA vice president. Before I went into administration, I was originally at Citrus Hill High School, which is our sister high school, with Dr. McCarrick as APs. And then I was moved over to Orange Vista High School, which is our brand new high school in our district. We're going into our 5th year. So we are brand new and growing. We are now the biggest school in the district at 2,500.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. My name is Robin Ellison. My title is I'm a school counselor with Val Verde School District, and I work at Rancho Verde High School. I just finished my lucky 13th year, 2020. And so I kind of see my role with counseling as being on the front line, being that soldier where I assist, like all counselors assist, advocate, and guide our students. We focus on graduation, college and career advising, A through G, of course, FAFSA, scholarships, all of that different things. And so we'll go into that a little bit later. Glad to be here today.
Okay, so with that, I know, Matt, you're going ahead and share your screen and start your slides. And today's a conversation, but also the team has prepared some slides and screenshots because people always say, we want to see what does this look like. I also want to add a shout out to Parrish Union High School District. They're also in Riverside County, and they're the 2nd district in the state to make FAFSA and California Dream Act a graduation requirement. And exactly echo what Cheryl said earlier, these districts were already in the 70s, 80% completion before they made it a grad requirement, but I think they wanted to solidify that this is a priority and something they will always do, and that's why they went forward and wanted to make that commitment to students. And so it's just huge shout out, very proud of both school districts. So one of the first questions our team's gonna discuss is, CSAC is committed to working with administrators and communities to encourage all students apply for FAFSA or the California Dream Act to ensure they are well equipped for the necessary financial aid resources, basically so they can pursue education beyond high school. Really big push from Race to Submit dashboard, making that data transparent was the first step. A lot of work behind the scenes to ensure our students are taking advantage of the financial aid available to them. So the question for the panelists, in your experience, what strategies or forms of outreach to students and their families have worked? What do you recommend high school campuses do to encourage their students to apply? So I know you're going to go ahead and you're sharing screen, Matt, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to kind of give examples of what the district does.
Yeah, so the first thing we want to share is this is our infographic. And one of the things that our district did from the beginning was one of our LCAP goals, #1, is college and career readiness. And so this is just a demographic overview, but our district made a big commitment, and one of our school board goals is our commitment to college and career readiness. So that led us into our different strategies for the outreach and the communication for what we do with our students and families. And so the biggest thing that we've learned is you got to be current with the times. And so I know a lot of us do email, we do face-to-face communication, which we'll talk about with the traditional setting, and then how we're transitioning over to our distance learning platform. So the first thing that our district is big on, and it comes directly down from our superintendent, who's very big on technology, so Mr. McCormick is a huge driving force in this, is our use of social media. So we utilize all different forms of social media. Twitter, we'll talk about Twitter analytics, which some people do and do not know about. Instagram, TikTok is the new one with kids. My 13-year-old daughter was on it this summer, this spring and summer, as she was doing her distance learning, and then utilizing Facebook. So we utilize a lot of different social media platforms. So all of our schools in our district, we utilize the same platforms. We utilize them in various ways, and we have different people that use their strengths. But a lot of the things that we utilize is Twitter. Twitter is a big deal in our district. All administration is encouraged to use Twitter. Our counselors have our own Twitter accounts as well. As you can see, Rancho Verde's counseling department is here utilizing their Twitter feeds of different events that we have coming up, different things we need to get out to the masses. And then our OVHS counseling, we did, as the distance learning started, we wanted to get out as much information as possible. So I'll share the different platforms that we use to get the information out. Twitter analytics is huge. So Catalina, thank you very much for allowing me to present at our COE at our School Leadership Network conference. So one thing that we look at is when you put out a tweet, how many impressions does your tweet get? Is it just being seen by a few? Is it being reshared? Is it being retweeted? And so one of the things we look at is with our workshops and our different things that we're getting out there is, what is the thing that are catching people's eye when it comes to Twitter? So this is the Twitter day on February 2020. Looking at the Twitter feed, there were 3 tweets, but it got 4,813 impressions. So you definitely want to look at and see, utilizing your Twitter analytics. It could be for every single account. You sign up for Twitter analytics and you can look and see what your monthly Twitter feeds look like, what hits you're getting, what impressions you're getting, and utilizing that data to be very strategic when you put stuff out there. You don't want to oversaturate, but you don't want to underperform when it comes to your social media outlets with Twitter analytics. So we are very strategic utilizing this to see what do we put out there, what's getting the most hits, and also who is connected to your account where they can piggyback and retweet so that the whole district and our whole community is being involved when it comes to our tweets. The next thing is Instagram. We use Instagram a lot as it's connected with Facebook and things of that nature. So when we have upcoming events, we use different ways to make our posters pop. You always want everything to pop when you put it out there so that everybody can read it, and when they scroll through, they say something quick, they can open it up. But this is Citrus Hill High School, our sister high school. Their Cognitive Career Center put up upcoming events and then had the January and February dates on there clearly out there so that everybody can read if they were up to it. And I'm guaranteed that the school students at Citrus Hill has this available to them at their fingertips. TikTok, here's a video. If the audio works, I hope I got the audio working. If it doesn't, I do apologize. You can definitely go on to Rancho Verde, to their Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and I'm sure that this TikTok video is somewhere. So I'm gonna hit play. Please let me know if you can or cannot hear it. Catalina, Dr. McCarrick, or somebody, please let me know. Oh, let me go back. So I need to go to here, press play.
Can't hear it, but it's okay.
So if you can hear it, this is Rancho Verde at their drive-up graduation doing a TikTok video. It is all the rage right now. If you couldn't hear it, like I said, please go on to the other platform and you can take a look at it. Citrus Hills principal made a TikTok video with his family during the distance learning. So just anything to connect with the kids. We did have a drive-up graduation for our graduation ceremonies at all 3 high schools. So it was a positive seeing the smiles on the faces of the parents and students. So like I said, Instagram, I do have a link on here. You can click, this is Val Verde Unified School Districts. Our district officials have their own Instagrams. And so this is Val Verde USD putting out Citrus Hill High School's graduation ceremony out there on Instagram. Facebook, this is Rancho Verde High School's Facebook page. Dr. McCarrick, if you'd like to add anything to this.
Yes, so like Matt said, we as a district regularly use our social media. It's probably one of the best ways for us to connect with our students and our families. We have a lot of families that are on Facebook. We have a lot of families on Instagram and Twitter. But what we found, Matt, if you want to slide over to the next one, is just the opportunity to communicate. So I was sharing with the rest of the panel members that what I found, especially during distance learning, is students find it easiest to send me a direct message, whether it's through my Twitter account or my Instagram account. And so that was probably one of the biggest ways that we had kids communicating with us, was, you know, figuring out our school Twitter accounts and social media and Facebook accounts, and getting to hold of us there. And so that allowed us to answer questions that parents had about, you know, especially with the seniors for graduation and college questions that they had, FAFSA questions. We utilized those direct message platforms regularly.
So this is a what's happening meeting with families where they're at. We have different workshops. We have FAFSA workshops. So this is a traditional setting, Saturday school, where they could come to the College and Career Center. So we do a lot of face-to-face workshops with families in the traditional setting for FAFSA. So that is something that, and the California Dream Act, that is something that we are working on with the distance learning platform, on how we can continue to give the support that we normally give during the settings. And then all of our schools do newsletters. So these are the newsletters that go out monthly. We send out a monthly newsletter. During distance learning, we, at our school site, we went weekly because the information was constantly changing. So any information that was coming through the school district or coming down from the state, we were putting in our newsletters, and any events coming up or deadlines that were coming up, we put in our newsletter. So we started doing them weekly during distance learning. We put resources there for the community and different things. So this is our newsletter for February that we have, and we want to make sure that information is getting to the students and parents. And then, like I said, is a monthly or weekly that we're using our different platforms. Our district is very big on Aries communication. The one thing we found with this is schools get a lot of phone calls. They send out a lot of phone calls, and parents, if they have multiple students at home, they get multiple phone calls. So those phone calls sometimes generate where a parent would listen, but the ones that we find the most effective are the text messages, because most people have a cell phone, and the text messages that go straight to your fingers, and they can look at a quick text message and then they're good to go and keep going on with what they're doing. District email, all of our students have a district email account, so we encourage our students to utilize that during our financial aid as well. One thing that all of our sites did is we did office hours. And so what we did is a counselor was available for 30 minutes. We use Zoom. Some people use Google Meets. It just depends on what district you were with. But we use Zoom. We were very well debriefed on how to make it secure, so we didn't have any Zoom bombers in there. But yeah, for 30 minutes, each of our counselors was available Monday through Friday. And we could go to breakout sessions if we had to do one-on-one counseling and people had individual questions. So this was very big with our counselors. It also gave them FaceTime to help with the morale, and the students can see their counselor's face instead of going to their offices. So these are the different connections that we used for our counselors during the distance learning, that we went from traditional to distance. Aries communication, we got training from our district professional development. The different events that we are looking at, college kickoff workshops, presentations, family assistance, we're transforming all of those to our distance learning platform. And then the guidance office support. How do we support students? We're a very big Google district. As you can see by me sharing our Google document, we like to work on different platforms to make sure that we all have access to it and we could all put our input. We're very big on Google Classroom. Google Classroom was huge for us. We have a Google Classroom for all of our grade levels. We now have a 2024 one for our incoming 8th graders. One of our freshman counselors have already met with 90 families based on us getting the information out. Google Forms, Google Sheets, we use to track our data. Google Slides, we do most of our presentations. Like I said, our newsletters, our office hours, we're gonna talk about our partnerships as well that we have. Social media, school websites need to be updated and functional. Don't look at our website right now because we are revamping the whole thing. One of our computer teachers was a web designer in a past life, so he is working on updating our school website. And then the different resources, we're utilizing S'mores for our counseling department that we learned from an RCOE webinar. And then things to think about, financial aid cleanup, celebrating our students and staff, and we're preparing for distance learning with all of our platforms. So over to Robin.
Okay, next, I think the million-dollar question we've all been hearing about and trying to figure out, what is school going to look like when we return in July or August, depending on your district? Is it going to be, you know, where everyone comes back and we have that traditional method? Are some students going to be able to be online if they choose so? So we're all looking at that. So with that being said, we want to look at how that's going to, how the fall is going to look. And we may go back and we may have to shut down again. No one really knows exactly what's going to happen. So because of this and how we ended the year, we are looking and preparing as a district and at individual sites. And I would say two of the biggest things is planning and debriefing, like what happened at the end of the year, how did certain events go, what we liked, what we didn't like. And you have to plan for different scenarios. Almost everyone I know that was working at different districts is coming up with different scenarios for different things. So with that being said, I'm going to briefly talk about certain events. So college kickoff, we do that in October. It's a weekly event. We do different activities every day. For example, we do a college walk. Our college walk looks like where you have teachers that they're alumni of different colleges. They would traditionally set up booths and students could come around. They would ask different questions and they could get points, win prizes. Going forward, it may be a virtual college tour where we may, you know, have to film our teachers talking or do different things. So we're starting to plan for that. Another day that we do is a alumni panel. In the past, they would all be in the theater. The students could come in different periods and teachers would sign up to bring their classes in, and then we would do a Q&A and do that, and that's been very popular. This year, one of the students, when we reached out for alumni, said, I would really like to be there, but they were away at college. So they actually videotaped them on their iPhone and sent us the video. So I'm thinking, how great is that? So worst case this year, if we can't all be there due to social distancing constraints, we could actually have our alumni send us a video so that way they can still get that that panel, that alumni panel presentation. As far as FAFSA and DREAMAC, traditionally we would have workshops, we would do after school, we would do all those one-on-ones. We may have to do more webinar formats, so we're starting to plan to see what that looks like. I had an intern before she left this summer. She was doing distance learning, helping me, and she came up and created a financial term list. So all the popular financial terms that we could actually put out and upload and put it in a Google Classroom. So that way students kind of know, kind of like a frequently asked questions, to come up with those kind of things so we can be ready. And of course, with one-on-one family assistance, what would that look like in a distance learning world? So that's where we'll probably have to use our Zoom or phone calls and kind of hand walk them through that, because we know, especially with distant learning, I think our students and our families are going to need even more support than in the traditional school setting. So I guess just to make sure you're prepared for both. Okay, over the next slide. All right, so my philosophy when it comes to talked about having different strategies, what we use in the past. And for me, I came up with this acronym early. We need to do everything early. And I think it's even more relevant today than it was at the start of this last school year. And so for me, when I break down early, what does that mean? Educate often. The E stands for educate often and early. So we have 8th grade parent student meetings, and we even tell them before they step foot on our campus, FAFSA is a graduation requirement. We start to tell them at the beginning of the year. I went out to the classrooms and other counselors did the same. We let even our underclassmen know, FAFSA, this is what you need. Our seniors, we all plugged in that date, October 1st, it opens. So that's the kind of thing you want to message out there. Now in the virtual world, you would do it with newsletters, Google Classroom, Remind. You want to use whatever messaging system that your team feels comfortable with to get that out. A stands for application assistance. How can we assist our families, whether they're virtual or in person, to be able to get the applications done? Or for relatives, we definitely need to utilize our families and connect with our parents and engage our parents and our guardians if we're not in the traditional way. So never underestimate that type of resource. Convince them to say, hey, if you complete your FAFSA or your son or daughter completes their FAFSA, maybe next year they won't be on your couch, that sort of thing. So you definitely want to pull in the relatives. L stands for leaders. What that means this year, what I did, I started October 1st, obviously FAFSA opened. I was plugging it way before. My personal goal for my caseload was to have all of my students done before we went on Christmas break, so I could clean up. So what I did, or our register did for me, the first 2 weeks in October, I ran a list and went out to the classroom. So all of my students that did theirs early, I brought full-size candy bars and I called them up in front of the classroom, had their other classmates clap for them and say, hey, these are our fast food leaders. And you would really be surprised of how many students after that, when Miss Ellison, did you get my confirmation? I did it. Are you going to come back out again? So little things go a long way. Finally, the why. Never, ever underestimate your relationship with your students. I'll tell you a quick little story. My goal, obviously, I told you, was to finish before Christmas break. I had one of my students, I was down to last 1 or 2 on my caseload, maybe the second week in December. She took, or was taking, about 4 to 5 AP classes. She was in band. Our band this year, remind you, this is December, was participating in the Rose Parade, January 1. So when I talk about no days off, no days off. So we were going back and forth. She was like, Miss Ellison, I just don't have time right now. So finally, one of our last conversations we had on a Friday, I said, you know what? I said, you know, it's going to actually start to reflect on me if you don't do your fast. So people are going to wonder why I can't get my seniors to be done before December. And I remember she put her hand on her chest and she said, Mrs. Ellison, you tell them it's on me, it's not on you. So I thought, oh, she's not going to do it. That was on Friday. On Sunday morning, I opened my email and I saw her confirmation email and I was ecstatic. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe she did it. So Monday morning, I made a beeline for her and I said, you know, what changed? I didn't think you were going to do it until, you know, after January. And she said, Mrs. Ellison, I did it for you because I didn't want people to think that you didn't do your job as a counselor. So whatever you can to help your students complete the FAFSA and work with them, make sure you do that. Okay. Google Suites. It's so important as your team at your school or your district find out what works for you. Some of you with Google Classroom have been using it since it opened. Other people, when we close down, probably like, what's a Google Classroom? I get it. Google Slides. Data collection is so important. If you look at this, I don't know, hopefully you guys can see it closely. Orange Vista did a great graph on, you could track them from November 1 all the way to May 17th, and you can look at this. Our school did something similar. It's so important. I cannot underestimate the value of tracking, especially when it comes to FAFSA, because you need to track who's done, who's left, who's completed. They could submit, but maybe their app isn't completed. Maybe there are no EFCs. And one of the reasons why I push finishing so early and fast, so you have plenty of time to clean up. And I think if we have to go where some of the students are online, or if we have to shut down again, it's even more important because we're gonna have designated time to clean up. So not just submitting, we need to make sure that they submit, that their apps are completed, and that we work through those no EFC issues and figure out how we can help them through that.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to share on this. I'm a very big proponent of Google Suites with Google Forms and Google Sheets. So this is our data that we tracked at Orange Vista. And so the thing that we looked at is that when we're doing our different data tracking, this is by monthly. So what I do is I have different sheets that I share with my team. And as we continue to go through the process, and I'm sure Rancho and Citrus did this because we did it when I was at Citrus, as well as we all have our own data tracking. And we utilize Google Sheets because all of our counselors can see where we're at, which students have finished, like Robin said. And this is monthly. So basically what I did is I took our monthly sheets, put them into one document, and then created a graph just so we can see how we were trending. And I'm going to do this year by year so I can see which events were a big bang for our buck, and looking and seeing where our biggest event was, or what social media content, or going into the classrooms doing presentations. Because as we transfer over to distance learning, the data collection piece is going to be a huge part of that. So Google Classrooms, our Google Classrooms are designed by different grade levels. And so each of our Google Classrooms, you can go in there and the students are able to see it because they use them for their regular classrooms. And we have a counseling one for each grade level. And we have different headers for college and career readiness, scholarships. We have it for financial aid. We have different videos on there. We have different PDFs or forms on there. So we utilize it to its max potential, trying to make sure our students are informed. This is a Google form. One of the things I shared with this, and I'll share with the data, is I love Google Forms because as of right now, you can get feedback from the students. So we did it for AP potential. We did it for our office sign-in. One of my reasons, and it was a selfish reason, was doing the counseling office sign-in sheet because I wanted to see what our traffic traditionally was in our counseling setting. And the reason is we had a very large population that grew really fast, and our counselors were 525 to 1. So I was really hoping we can get another counselor. And so utilizing the Google Office form, I'll show you the data in a future slide, I was able to present this data and show the need. And so data collection, why it is necessary, how we are tracking how many students were being seen daily, weekly, or monthly in your site's guidance office, what are students most being seen for in your office, and which grade level is seen more, which period are students being seen, and which counselor is seeing more students, and then how you can use that data to determine what the needs are happening during distance learning. So when I see what students are being seen for, I can see what they're being seen for the most, and we can plan for that during our distance learning model. So here's the data collection of our students signing in to their Google form. Every time they walk in, we have 2 laptops that were open. They can sign in, and I could see what current period they were in, what grade they represented. As you can see, most of our seniors were seen quite a bit, and then which counselor was being seen the most, Miss Clark and Miss Moore, so the same person because she ended up getting married. So I combined those percentages. And then the reason for seeing your counselor, it has the top ones on there. As you can see, FAFSA California DREAM Act questions was one, and then you had an appointment with their counselor, credit recovery, schedule change, or summoned by counselor. There was a list of different things that are being seen there, but this data did allow me to get a 6th counselor, which we are gaining this fall. So the data collection is a huge piece of it. And as we continue to go through it, when we win, our students win. And so this is all 3 high schools getting their Race to Submit banner last year for at the RCOE School Leadership Network. And as you can see, Robin Ellison is right there with Rancho, and I'm the 6'10" one standing in the back. And you can see all the hard work that our district, these are all support, administrators, counselors, our school board member, our superintendent's kneeling. And so we utilize a lot of different things to assist our students.
Thank you so much, Matt. I know we definitely need time for questions. If you can share with us, either Cheryl, Matt, or Robin, you guys do so many different things for outreach for students, and they didn't happen all at one time, right? They gradually grew over time. For those on the call, we have people on the call. We have now, I know you're going to send out those 3 executive orders via Instagram and Remind 101 and all the different platforms you do. But if there's one thing, one strategy when it comes to outreach with students and parents that you feel that is the most beneficial, what's the bang for their buck? Given the time frame, some of our people on the call are going to go on summer break in about a week or 2 weeks. So to get this information out, what would be the one strategy you would say? So I'll start, Cheryl or Matt or Robin, if you want to answer that. If on all the strategies, what is you feel the best one that they could do that had the most engagement of students responding and taking care of business?
I would say at least from the point of getting families engaged, what I found, and even across the district with different initiatives during these school closures, is offering webinars that parents can go back and review, and getting that information out through our Aries communication and social media. But having those things recorded and ready to go for parents, we've had really good participation with those Zoom meetings. It's really easy for families in the evening to be able to log in and listen while they're maybe cooking dinner or getting things ready to start hearing about all these changes going on, especially with these 3 new initiatives that are changes to FAFSA that are coming out, and we're going to need to get to parents.
Okay, so you would say, I'll let you answer, Robin. So here's an example. So I'm already thinking, when I thought of the selective services, we have a lot of schools that have a lot of dream students, and this could have preventing some of our mails when there was conversations of, all the political climate and all of that. So, you're saying a Zoom webinar, maybe at night with parents, and maybe also offering in Spanish for some of those families to say, hey, I know you were nervous about it, but here's an opportunity.
Yes, and that's been very powerful in our community. In our district, we have a family engagement center. And so during these closures, every webinar or message that we've pushed out to communities, we've always had someone to help translate the webinar for our families. And that's been very helpful.
Go for it, Robin. Please give us your idea.
I agree completely with Cheryl, and especially with we have to get the message out, especially with the dreamers, just in general, and their families. They have to trust us, so we have to build those relationships all year long, so they feel comfortable. What I found out, there's some kids that they're scared to open up and even tell us that they're a dreamer. So I think all throughout the year, we need to reach out to them. We need to build that rapport with their families, starting when they start, with us as freshmen on up. So when the time comes, they feel comfortable with sharing that they're having issues, and we can give them those updates like what the Selective service, what CSAC has done to make their lives easier. But I think it also starts before that, especially when you're talking about dreamers, and letting them know as a counseling team and as a school and a district, we are there for all of our students.
Thank you. Go for it, Matt.
One of the things I do want to clarify, this is from the California Affordability Summit. This is not the School Leadership Network. This was the California Ability Summit in Palm Springs. Thank you for having us there. But the one thing that we do take advantage of, and it helps in our district, and we're fortunate, is our students are a one-to-one district when it comes to technology. So our students having access to Chromebooks and things of that nature, our students are used to opening up Google Classroom and having all of the documents available for them. We can put the videos that Dr. McCarrick was talking about with the webinars on there. And then utilizing the office hours with Zoom was huge for our school site, because we had a lot of students on there that had questions. They could ask questions on the Google Classroom, where all of our counselors would get the information, and then they would come and go to the Zoom meeting if they had anything they needed to clarify. So definitely utilizing our different outlets has been huge. And I think utilizing what your school site or your district students are comfortable with or already know.
Thank you. And before I pass it over to back to Judith, our Val Verde Unified has been amazing at supporting and working with districts across the state. So if you're listening in and you're thinking, hey, I'd love for them to come talk to our counseling teams or a district, or please let us know, reach out. They've done different presentations in states to support. They're really, it's beyond FAFSA completion for them. It's just not just a number to win a banner. They can show through data, and they didn't include this slide, but I'm gonna brag about them a little bit. Just from class of 2015, class of 2015 to class of 2019, they've gone from a 54% college enrollment rate up to a 64% college enrollment rate. We're talking about hundreds of additional students enrolling in post-secondary, and not self-reporting. That's self-reporting data. That's verified National Student Clearinghouse data. So, one of the questions we wanted to talk about today is, why is this so important for higher education? And when you work in a district like Val Verde, and some of you on the line today, and you have over 70% of your students on free and reduced lunch, and they qualify, and they just don't know what they don't know. And they're making decisions without the guidance or truly understanding. And I think there was a question earlier, when it comes to making a graduation requirement, they don't just let a student sign a piece of paper. They sit down with the family. As administrators, Dr. McCarrick will sit with the family and explain to them what they're missing out on if they don't. And so another shout out, for example, to Dr. McCarrick's and Rancho Verde, they have now, and their graduation rate, Cheryl, do you want to share your graduation rate stats before we go to questions? I got to let you brag, because all of this, your FAFSA completion and all that builds to that. Can you share your graduation rate, please?
Well, our district graduation rate is at a 97%. And so what we're anticipating for the class of 2020, and I think we could say this across the board at all our comprehensive high schools, is we had every senior meet their graduation requirements, which, considering the school closures and everything that was going on, it's the work of our counselors and our teaching staff to try and make sure that we got the students what they needed.
And so Cheryl's last year, class of 2019, she had a 99% graduation rate, and for a Title I large traditional high school. This isn't a charter. This isn't an, she enrolls who comes to her door, and she also had 100% graduation rate for African-American students. So would you agree, Cheryl, that high expectation, FAFSA completion, you can do more than just graduate high school, has all helped build that culture?
Yes, definitely. I think that, and it's high expectations that come from everybody, right? Not just me as an administrator or the counselors, but it's the teachers too, making sure that they're pushing that. We really depend on our teaching staff to encourage and make sure, I mean, like, we're talking, back in the day, this was a school where not everybody got to participate in an advanced placement course. And now we've, opened that up, and we've provided supports for kids, and it's showing in our data that they're succeeding and they're doing well, and they're deciding to go on to college now.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Judith. I don't know if you're going to moderate a few more additional questions before we leave today, but I'll pass it back to you. And thank you so much, Val Verde Unified, Superintendent Mike McCormick, for your leadership, Assistant Superintendent Mark Lenore as well. They took a lot of heat for pushing FAFSA as a graduation requirement, but they knew it was right for their students. And I think there's been multiple byproducts. So those of you administrators on the call listening, they didn't go after the negative. They didn't go after the kids getting suspended and the students that are absent. They went after having higher expectations for their students. So Judith, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair Cifuentes. Hi, everyone. So again, thank you to everyone that presented for sharing that valuable information. We are in our Q&A portion now. My colleague, Michael Lemus, will be reading through any of the written questions that were submitted. You're more than welcome to check out the tab that says answered so you can see all the written responses as well. But I will be calling on our audience members who have their hands raised if they'd like to verbally share a question. So I do see a couple hand raises now. I'll get to those in a minute. For those who asked if you can have a PDF copy of the PowerPoint presentation, unfortunately, we can't just add links and share files on the Q&A chat box. That's only to answer questions. So we will happily share the PDF version of this PowerPoint that we just presented as an attachment to our recorded version on our website of this overall video. So please stay tuned for that. We do want to have that available and ready by next week. So with that being said, I see that a question might have come in our Q&A box. Michael, did you want to go ahead and read the first question?
Sure, yeah, this looks like it came in from an anonymous attendee. So it says, when will the 2021 Cal Grant C supplement recipient report be available for download? It says the GOM said we could download it, but it's not available yet. So this sounds like it might be a PASD question, but anyone that's available to answer that live, we'd greatly appreciate that.
This is Terry. I will look into why the report did not generate. So that may not be answered by the time this Q&A is done. And if it isn't generating, we'll generate it. We'll see that it generates this weekend.
Thank you, Terry. And if anyone is having any of those more specific questions, they can certainly email school support, right?
That's correct.
Thank you so much.
And the email address is schoolsupport, one word, at CSAC, CSAC.ca.gov.
Thank you. So we have a hand raised from Nancy Rodriguez. I will let you go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask your question. Nancy, you seem to have your hand up. Did you want to go ahead and ask it? Okay, we can get back to your question. We also have another member, Fidencio, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I don't think in the webinar feature, I don't know if we're able to unmute ourselves because they're attendees, Judith. So if they want to go ahead, if they can't, we can't hear them, if they want to add it on their chat.
Yeah, so both boxes work. I am here allowing them to unmute themselves as I see hands raised and asking them to unmute themselves, but As mentioned, you're more than welcome to also just write your question in the Q&A box. Michael, do we have any new questions coming in?
Nope, but we did hear from Nancy that that was actually an accident, so we can go ahead and move forward with some other questions.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Michael, anything on your end?
It looks like we just got one from Patricia, so I'll go ahead and read that out. So it says, our campus received nearly 115 additional competitive Cal Grant awards the week before last. Several of these students are Cal Grant SWD students with holds for verification of their dependent children. We cannot pay the report their Cal Grants as paid until the SWH hold is cleared. This is also an issue with our December population of SHW recipients. Do you know how long these will remain in SWH status until they are reset to regular awards with the 1672 Cal Grant B Access Award so that we can report them for payment? When will these Cal Grant C competitive awards be withdrawn if we cannot report them?
Thank you, Michael.
And I'm wondering if someone from PASD can go ahead and answer that as well.
Hi, Michael. This is Patricia. I'm not sure that I can answer that question. I would just, it seems like it's related to a job that we would probably need to run or.
Well, yeah, this is Steve. We'll take a look at that because we want to make sure we give the students enough time to claim their Students with Dependents Award. And I know we did have that in December and then we released them a little bit later. So we'll take a look at that and make sure that we are, giving the students enough time, and then we'll need to send an update out on those because yeah, this is the second time through the recycle that we've had that issue. We want to make sure that they do have time to claim, and hopefully they will go online and claim. We've sent them reminders to claim their Students with Dependents if they're eligible.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any other questions on the Q&A box? I think I see two coming in. Michael?
Yes, we just got a question in from Chris Clay. It says, will students that confirm their SWD status for 2020 roll over to 2021, or will they need to re-verify?
So I believe they'll need to re-verify to ensure that their that they have dependents under 18. Michael, it looks like you were going to answer the question as well.
Oh, I was just marking it live since you were answering, but thank you.
Oh, I see. Okay. I wasn't sure what that meant.
Hi, Steve. This is Patricia. That is correct. Students have to fill out their FAFSA every year to renew, right? So, and that question is listed there. So every year we need to determine whether they qualify for the Student with Dependents.
Right.
And they will have to confirm that.
The question on the FAFSA is not quite as specific as state law. State law says they have to have dependents under 18. And the question on the FAFSA just says, do you have dependent students? So they would have to verify that they have students under 18.
Correct.
I mean, dependents under 18, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I see another question came in. Are excused withdrawals due to COVID-19 eligible for retroactive Cal Grant payments?
You know, Judith, I saw that question, and I'm not sure what they mean by excuse withdrawals. Are they referring to a leave of absence maybe? Where the students maybe, if they were planning on going, let's say, for example, to school starting in the fall, but due to COVID-19, they are not certain that they want to go to school in the fall. Are they asking whether if the student can add a leave of absence? They certainly should. And I actually glad that came up because one of the things that, when we're working with students, especially when they're new to the program, that they do need to remember that once they've been awarded or offered a Cal Grant, and if they're not going to go to school, they really need to notify that. They need to post a leave of absence in their Rancho students account so that we can acknowledge that, yes, I acknowledge this Cal Grant, but at this time I'm not able to go to school, so I'm putting a leave of absence. Students actually get 2 years of, when they start, their award, 4 years of leave of absence. So 2 years of leave of absence. So if they're not going to go to school, let's say on the fall, they do need to post the leave of absence for the fall.
So we're seeing some clarifications here on the Q&A box, and it seems the excused withdrawals are withdrawals because of COVID-19 specifically.
Right, and we wouldn't do a retroactive payment if they didn't go to school, but if they were in school past the census date, then we wouldn't collect that back. I'm not sure if that answers the question. Excuse withdrawals because of COVID-19.
Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Steve.
I'm just going to add that we haven't had too many calls about that, and if students do call, we would handle them individually and depending on what their situation is.
Got it. If anyone would like clarification, please feel free to include a more specific question as well, or any follow-ups. So the next question we have is from Raul, and says, what does the 2020-2021 SWD process look like? What will CSAC send out to students prompting them to complete the SWD process?
So when they go into their web grants for students, they would have that on their to-do list. And then also we send out reminders to students to certify their students with dependent status and to go into web grants and certify that. So we will, we'll send out reminders, and they can also go into web grants for students and see their status there.
So it is similar to the to-do list. What the student will see when they log in is a pop-up question that they need to certify. So they will click on that and then answer all the questions. But it is similar to the to-do list because it'll be on hold until they actually certify themselves that they qualify for the student with dependence additional amount. And then we would also, CSAC, the California Student Aid Commission, sends reminders to the students. So it is very important that the students pay attention to their emails. Unfortunately, we don't have the capability to send text messages, which we all know, works better for all of us. But we do communicate with students at this time through email, so they do need to pay attention to that. And we do send reminders to them to make sure that they remember to go in and confirm whether they qualify or not. They still need to answer the question.
Thank you, Patricia. So the next question, and then I'll hand it over to Michael. So this question is, CADA students, or the California DREAM Act students, will have their selective service requirement waived. Will they still need to submit a registration form now? Or if not, will they be required to do so in the future? And it looks like Yvonne wants to answer this question live.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the audience that the selective service registration requirement for students still applies. The only difference during this COVID extension is that the verification requirement by the college is being waived for the 1920 and the 2021 DREAM Act applications.
Thank you, Yvonne. Michael, would you like to read the next question?
Sure, and it looks like there's still some conversation around the excuse withdrawal. So I want to get through the rest of the questions, but if there's some specific questions as it pertains to your students or your school with this situation, I would recommend, and just to confirm, Steve and Patricia, should they be emailing student support or school support for these questions?
They can, Michael, they
Michael?
can definitely email us.
And it looks like I just heard someone else speak. I wasn't sure who that was.
Yeah.
Sandra, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Yes, so if it is the school, I would say go ahead and email school support if it is, if the question is coming from a school.
Great, thank you. So I'll go to Raul's question then. At what point will the SWD be cleared for 2020, 2021 so we can pay students at least the 836?
Alessandra, you want to take that one? We had a question earlier about students with dependents for 1920, but now for 2021.
Mhm. Yes, so for 2021, it will work similar to how it worked for 1920. So at some point in the academic year, we will reprocess those students back to a non-SWD status, but we haven't determined just yet at what point we will do that. I think for right now, we're going to try to give the students as much time as possible to confirm their eligibility for the additional access award, and I would say probably towards the end of the fall.
And I just want to add to that too. We're kind of amazed that a lot of students don't self-certify and we don't hear from them. We had a lot of students this year that didn't claim the extra money, and if anybody has any ideas on how we can reach those students better, that'd be great to know, because we do send out reminders, and we do have it on their student landing page, and we know they're getting awards because they're waiting for their regular Cal Grant award. But we want to make sure that we're reaching them and that they do claim their extra award, because that's a lot of money for students to be able to get when they have dependents and they have those extra expenses. So anybody has any ideas to help us get that word out, that would be great to hear too.
Thanks for that, everyone. And it looks like we have another SWD question coming in from Pilar. It says, for the SWD status, if school determines they do not support their child for XYZ reason, for example, no employment, no state support, etc., can the student appeal that with CSAC?
If the student wants to appeal that, they will have to work with the school on that. Alessandra, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what we did last year.
Yes, so that is that's going to have to be ultimately determined by the school official, and we will take the school's final decision on that.
Thank you. So the next question we have is, can CSAC create any video guides on how to complete the California DREAM Act application, similar to the videos that the Department of Education has for FAFSA?
I think Jose Kiawit, you're on the line. You want to talk about some of the things we're doing in training for videos?
Yes, I just answered it via text, but I also can talk about the fact that not only are we doing specific videos and training content for kid application, as far as student access and the student part, demographics, we're also doing it for the parents. So we're doing every bit of the application in order to walk through the application, but we're also walking through different aspects of qualification, and we're also looking at AB 540. So there's a variety of webinars, live webinars, and recorded webinars that we'll have available in order for students, parents, and administrators that they can access via our website through training and outreach.
Can I would like to add that we are planning on releasing specific videos to walk both parents and students through the application, probably on October 1, once we're ready to launch the new DREAM Act application.
Awesome, thank you both. The next question is, if Cal Grant students dropped all of their courses for spring 2020 because of COVID-19, will they be able to consider making SAP for Cal Grants as they would meet federal guidelines?
I just want to highlight something too. I know that that's kind of a complicated question. Let's see, if they dropped all their courses in spring of 2020 because of COVID-19, will they be able to consider, I think they would need to take a leave of absence if they dropped all their courses and they didn't get their Cal Grant, but that would probably be after. So we'd have to take a look at that for that student. And then also I just posted the COVID-19 frequently asked questions link in our Zoom web chat, I think, to everybody, all panelists and attendees. So that's there. If people have additional questions about COVID-19, I think that information will be helpful.
Thanks, everyone. So it looks like we got another question. So what if students dropped all of their courses due to COVID-19? Will that affect their Cal Grant and ended up with an emergency withdrawal EW for their grade?
Hi, Michael. This is Alessandra. So I think for us, the question is, have the students dropped all units after they had received a Cal Grant disbursement? Is that the question? Because I think those are the details that we would need to look into.
Thank you for that, Alessandra. And we have another one. So what if students use their school email in their application and receive notification over summer to accept award or answer the question?
So we always encourage students to use their own email. We know that a lot of them share emails at school, so they should use their personal email, and we always remind them to update their email address if they're not using an email anymore. So we want to make sure that they continue to update on Web Grants for Students so that we do have their main mode of communication, which is email.
And that's why we encourage them to log into Web Grants for Students, because when they completed the FAFSA or the CADA and they indicated their school email on that, that's what our Web Grants will update, Web Grants for Students will update. So make sure that students understand when they log into their Web Grants for Students, that's that they make sure that they update that email address.
Thanks, everyone. And so it looks like our next question is, will there be an option to batch confirm SWH for students who we have confirmed have the dependents in the future?
We are working towards that. We don't have yet that process in place, but that is something that we're considering as part of the phase 3 of this program. We'll send a communication out when that is available.
Thank you all. So we have a question from Christine. It says, through the CARES Act, for students who have withdrawn for the term because of COVID-19, we are to reverse out the return to Title IV aid for federal aid. Should we be doing the same for Cal Grant awards? For example, students who have withdrawn due to COVID-19, the student is eligible to receive all their original disbursed aid. Would we give back all Cal Grant aid based on the original disbursement? Any responses?
Hi there, this is Yvonne. Steve, did you want to answer that?
Go ahead, Yvonne. I was looking at the FAQs.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So when a return to Title IV is calculated, the Cal Grant funds also need to be returned, and that is supported in the Cal Grant handbook.
Thank you. One question from Marissa. Will CSAC waive the requirement for campuses to complete the E2 transfer entitlement verification review for the 2021 academic year?
We don't have any changes to that program right now, so we would still require the E2 transfer entitlement verification. Yeah, there hasn't been any changes to the transfer entitlement.
Awesome, thank you, Steve. So it looks like we have time for a couple more questions. We have one left. It says, if I have a student that is currently only in 4 active credits, but withdraws 6 credits with an EW due to COVID-19, can we pay them their Cal Grant award as if they are 10 credits, or they wouldn't be eligible because they are only active in 4 credits?
So a lot of these questions go back to the institutional policy on return of funds. I know that the federal government has allowed for some exceptions that, you know, may not necessarily be applicable to Cal Grant. In this case, for us, we would need to know, well, was the student enrolled in those 10 units at census? And if that is the case, then the student can keep the funds, since it is not a full withdrawal for the term. But in a lot of these, I would say definitely send those over to institutional support so that we can review one by one with the specifics on each record.
Thank you, Alessandra.
Looks like we just got another one. So follow up to the return to the Title IV question. We are reversing the return to Title IV calculation. That being said, are we to reverse the Cal Grant and give back the students originally dispersed?
Yeah, I think the process that we would follow, that we would ask schools to follow, is their school policy and the federal policy. So it would be the same. And I think Alessandra spoke to the return of Title IV, depending on, you know, when the student dropped. And they do have to have at least 6 units. There's lots of questions coming in, so I'm reading those as they come in.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, it looks like Jackie is also talking about the process. So there's a process for the return to Title V process for the federal grants. What about, I think this was CSAC. What about CSAC? How do we do the calculation for Cal Grant recipients?
I think what we're gonna have to do is take a look at this, and there's a lot of questions coming in. We'll have to put together some more direction and send that out. I don't know that we can answer each of these questions right now. ED is waiving R2 to 4 for the spring term. Yeah, there's a lot coming in.
Yes, I think that would, I agree with you, Steve. I think if some of the participants can go ahead and send those over to our school support email, we can take a look at them and update our frequently asked questions document with some more information. I think it is very specific to the R2T4 and then the current guidelines from the federal government in terms of Pell Grant. And so we're going to have to look at it a little bit more closely and see if we can have a process similar for Cal Grant, or if we don't have the authority to align with that piece.
So this is Marlene. I would like to thank everyone for all these great questions, and we will follow up and provide answers to these questions. And you can also call our institutional line, our call center, to ask specific questions from an institutional perspective. But these are really important questions, and particularly like a year like this year, we'd like to be able to get you all the responses if we can't get all the responses today. But this has been really a fantastic dialogue, and we really want to thank you for giving us this these questions, this feedback, and also that we will have several more webinars to come, and we'd love to have you join us, and are really grateful for your participation, because you are the extension that reaches directly to the students. So we want to do everything we can to support you so you can support them.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Marlene. And thank you to all our presenters, PASD, Government Relations, and the Valverde team for joining us today. And thank you to our audience members for jumping on and just sharing the word. And as Executive Director Garcia said, we do look forward to seeing you all in our future webinars as part of our overall Empowering California Students CSAC webinar series. So please keep an eye out for any new announcements of any webinars coming in or any future trainings from our training and outreach team. These are all very useful, and your questions are highly appreciated because it helps us make sure that all the information we are sharing is as specific as possible and is definitely as helpful and useful to you all and your communities. So with that, if we have any other comments from our team, we can adjourn.